Haven't been around Morning Joe for a long time. We aren't company men and women. In fact, I think we're pretty merciless about the Beijing games, especially in the first week or so, with all the pollution and everything else. But it was. But still, I'm still take that lower third down. That's just, yeah. There you go. There you go. Okay, I can talk about it. We talked yesterday, so a lot of Olympic glory, but also media companies struggling. And what was interesting last week was, and you probably didn't catch it because you were in the middle of everything over there, but the same week we heard that Peacock was doing great streaming-wise. And historic, we also heard that Disney made their first profit in streaming. I mean, this is a long time coming. People see all the reports about media companies having to fire people, lay off people, et cetera, et cetera. Part of that problem is that advertising revenue had collapsed from linear and hadn't quite made it back up with those points hadn't sort of reached with streaming, and suggests that these Olympics may be remembered for more than just an extraordinary sports story and extraordinary event, but also a pretty big media story as well.
Yeah, it was definitely a pivot point for Peacock and maybe for others, that now they can launch all their other products. They have people who come and enjoyed the experience on Peacock. And like I said, it was, even for me, when you can't get out to all the venues, but you got to keep track. I mean, you just call up Peacock, you click on the icon of whatever the sport is, and there it is. It was very, very well done. And one other point that I had been thinking about a lot since I left Paris a couple of days ago, just kind of a bigger idea, is coming back to our politics right where it is when I left, where it was, is just the spirit of the games. And I know it sounds corny and all that, but you see these athletes from all over the world, from all these different countries, cheering for themselves, cheering for each other, hugging each other, even when they lose, supporting each other. The positivity, the patriotism, and all the things that come with the Olympics that we become accustomed to see, in contrast with what we live through every day. And we talk about our politics. People out there in the world are not behaving the way some of our politicians behave. I would put this is the best of us, these Olympic athletes, and they work their entire lives for these moments. And when they lose, they walk over and shake their hand and say, I'll be here at the next Olympics. It just, that vibe, and I know we only get to capture it for 2.5 weeks of the Olympics, was extraordinarily refreshing in contrast to our politics.
Yeah, well, you know, and again, I'm so glad you said our politics, not even our country. It's the point we try to make here all the time. America is doing great. And by the way, I said this when Donald Trump was president. I said it when Barack Obama was president. I said it when George W. Bush was president, even though I had problems, so many problems, obviously, with Donald Trump, but also ideologically with the other guys I mentioned. I mean, we're stronger than ever economically. We're stronger than ever militarily. We're stronger than ever culturally. Our soft power, our hard power, everything. I mean, we've fed and freed more people than any other country on the planet. Americans are good people. Right now, our politics divide us. We need to move past that. We have got to stop this red and blue, sort of a black and white choice. And I think we can do that. But what you're talking about, Willie, it's just like at the beginning of the games, people tried to politicize it. They tried to politicize it at the end of the games. And Americans are like, you know what? I want to see Katie Ledecky swim.
That's right.
I want to see, keep your politics and your culture wars. Like, keep that on your little blog in your mom's basement. I'd like to see Simone Biles. I'd like to see the basketball team. On and on. It's just, it was pretty inspiring.
And if you doubt the power of the Olympics, watch the professional athletes who have all the fame and the money and the success they could ever want in the world. Watch the way Steph Curry and LeBron James, the two biggest stars in basketball, how they emoted during and after that game and what it meant to them. Watch Scottie Scheffler, the best golfer in the world, cry in the medal stand as they play the national anthem. Watch Novak Djokovic, the greatest men's player of all time in tennis, collapse to the ground after he won his gold medal. It really is something different. It really is something powerful, the Olympic Games.
Now, it really is. It really is. We have so much to talk about this morning. And I want to talk to David French in 1 minute. But I've got to say, Gene Robinson, I'm going to start with the Wall Street Journal editorial page, and, I agree with a lot of things they say. I disagree with a lot of things they say. I'm a bit befuddled with one of their editorials today, and it hits on a topic that actually drove me to Congress 30 years ago, and that is deficits, debt, federal spending, fiscal irresponsibility. We've got a $35 trillion debt right now. Nobody seems to care about it, but their editorial today suggests that Donald Trump should lecture Kamala Harris on deficits. This Donald Trump, and anybody that's watched this show knows, Donald Trump has the worst fiscal record of any president in the history of the country. And you can go back and look at documents from Donald Trump's Treasury Department. They lay it out very clearly. Even before COVID, he was exploding the deficit. I tweeted something this morning as I was getting ready for the show after I read this, and it shows a line of the deficit going down like this under Barack Obama, going down from the 2008 collapse, and then shooting back up the second Donald Trump becomes president of the United States. So again, I am all for fiscal responsibility. In fact, that's that's what got me into this business in the first place. But to suggest that Donald Trump should lecture anybody on the deficit instead of writing an editorial talking about he was the most fiscally reckless president in U.S. history. He accumulated and amassed more debt in 4 years than America did, the Republic did, its first 225 years of existence. That's the editorial to write and ask whether he's going to be any different if he gets elected over the next 4 years.
Yeah, and of course it wouldn't be any different. Donald Trump has never cared about the deficit at all, and as you say, he was the biggest spender, certainly one of the biggest spenders in American history. However you look at it, in absolute terms, per capita, whatever, he was a huge spender. He slashed revenue for the government with his big tax cuts. He didn't offset it with any actual budget cuts. In fact, he doesn't like budget cuts. He wants to spend more. So he is absolutely the last person in the world you would ask to come in and fix a deficit. And that actually is true. You look at the cycle over the last 20, 30, 50 years, if you want to cut the deficit, elect Democrats. They're supposed to be the big spenders, but the deficits go down. And if you want bigger deficits and more debt, elect the Republicans. They just like to spend that money. And Donald Trump is certainly of that ilk.
The only time Republicans hear about deficits is when Democrats are in the White House. And then when they're in the White House again, you saw it under George W. Bush. You saw it under Donald Trump. Deficits explode at record rates. Willie, Willie, if you could, love for you to read this David French piece. I do want to circle back to David really quickly, though. And David, before we read your new piece for the New York Times, I just want to say this is what's so maddening to me. The very things that made you and me conservatives, the very things that moved us to the Republican Party, the very things that made us believe that we were fighting for right, whether it was I'm more boring, but balanced budgets, fiscal responsibility, taking care of taxpayers' dollars, giving them the best bang for their buck, making government as efficient as possible, having the local government do what the local government can do and what they can't let the state governments do and what they can't let the federal governments do. And in all of that, you're worried about individual freedoms, individual liberty, individual rights to go out, work hard, make a living, make a life where your kids have it better than you do and they have a better opportunity than you even had, right? That's gone, man. That is gone. And when I hear people talking about, you're not a conservative, it's laughable. Because what we're seeing now, we're seeing idol worship for not just, I would say a guy, it's a party now. It's a party. They're not conservative. They're not fiscally conservative. They're not conservative on foreign policy. They've got two candidates that want to turn Ukraine over to the Russians. The antithesis of everything that Ronald Reagan fought for, that Republicans have always fought for. There is nothing conservative about this Republican Party. And, David, I just have to ask, if they lose again this year, is that okay? Here we go. If the question I was going to ask is, if they lose this year, is there a chance that they are going to go back to more tried and true Burkean, Reagan-esque conservative principles? By the way, what you're looking at now, direct from Joe's Twitter account, a little chart I made this morning after reading the op-ed. In blue, that is left-wing, socialist, communist, whatever you want to call him, Bill Ayers-loving, Reverend Wright-loving, left-wing, like Marxist Barack Obama's deficit record. By the way, it goes down. It goes straight down. So all those things Republicans said about him, obviously not true. Now, if you look right after Barack Obama left office, by the way, 4 years pre-COVID, look at deficits under Donald Trump. David, they go straight up. That's not conservative.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, one of the things that's happening is you have MAGA has seized control of the Republican Party, intentionally transforming it radically, not just, of course, on a policy basis, but on a character basis, calling the old Republican Party the dead consensus. And if you object to it, they say, well, what happened to you? In other words, they're pulling the party away and accusing anyone who objects to it of being a traitor. And this has been the dynamic for 9 years now. And here's what's stunning, though, Joe. And, you know, I think some of your viewers just would be amazed by this. There are still many, many, many Republicans who don't realize how different MAGA is from traditional Republicanism. There's still many Republicans who believe they're voting for at least strong elements of the older party. And Trump benefits immensely from this, even as MAGA just keeps changing it.
So, David.
Yeah, Willie, look at that.
Yeah, there it is. It's pretty clear, stark in that graphic there. You've got a new piece out for the New York Times, David, titled "To Save Conservatism from Itself, I am voting for Harris." In it, David writes this: while there are voters who are experiencing a degree of Trump nostalgia, remembering American life pre-COVID as a time of full employment and low inflation, there is a different and darker story to tell about Trump's first term. Our social fabric frayed. It's not just that abortions increased, the murder rates skyrocketed, drug overdose deaths hit new highs, marriage rates fell, and birth rates continued their long decline. Americans ended his term more divided than when it began. I'm often asked by Trump voters, David writes, if I'm still conservative, and I respond that I can't vote for Trump precisely because I am conservative. The only real hope for restoring a conservatism that values integrity, demonstrates real compassion, and defends our foundational constitutional principles isn't to try to make the best of Trump, a man who values only himself. If he wins again, it will validate his cruelty and his ideological transformation.